Well, thank you, Ed, for joining me on all things business and technology.
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to have a discussion with you today.
Definitely. Yeah, one of the things the reason why I wanted to have you on is because you've had 30 plus years career in the technology field. And can you describe what it is that you do and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I started working at the dawn of the internet, right? So mid to late 90s, 96, 97, and doing very simple HTML sites for some brands with some people I knew at the time. And then I started working at RGA, which was one of the first digital studios, and they were at the point where they were transitioning from a Flame studio, and they were doing digital very early on for wraparounds for television and film titles, and they were known basically as a film title company, and they started getting into interactive. And I worked there from the late 90s to the early 2000s for about 5 years, and I was a technical lead and a solution architect and consultant. And RGA came to grow to be a very prominent force in digital and interactive, and opened multiple offices worldwide, and were agency of the year. So I kind of came in right at the beginning of that, and worked there as they began to develop that model. And one of the things that they did was they started going towards more of a consulting model, where they were more consultative and partnering with their customers on solutioning. So I got very into that, and did a lot of freelancing and other things, and came to work with a company based in New York City called Northpoint in about 2011. And I worked with them for 4 years. I became the um, lead of the Microsoft practice. The company was broken into three practices: Java, open source, and Microsoft, and concentrated on content management. So I began to have more of a concentration in content management for large enterprise, working with large um, biotech and media and consumer organizations, really on large brands. And that was the true start of digital transformation, right, for large enterprise. In 2015, Northpoint was acquired by EY. We went into EY along with a number of other acquisitions, and became the first wave of digital platforms, national advisory digital consulting. And that has grown considerably to be about 10 times the size now. This is in 2015. So that practice now at EY is about 4,000 people or so. I worked in that practice as a principal consultant for digital transformation for large enterprise, working with Fortune 100, Fortune 50 customers on modernization, cloud modernization, digital transformation, rebranding, migration, and what has now become what's more commonly known as mock architecture, the microservice API cloud headless model that most of the web operates on at this point. And quite a bit of experience at securing mock applications and working with customers to modernize, whether they're on premise or hybrid, and getting organizations more comfortable with the cloud and having an operating stance that allows them to be successful with transitioning their digital properties to cloud architecture.
Wow. I love to hear that because you literally started at the dawn of internet to where we are today.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and knowing some of these things, was this always what you wanted to get into? Was this something that you went to school for, or how did you come into
Sure.
technology? And
So growing up, my father was in commercial art, and I really liked the art studio. I have an uncle who was a traditional cell animator, and I kind of grew up around creative people, artists and musicians, and I spent a lot of time in the graphics studio with my dad. I used to like to go to work with him and stuff. So I would work on the paste board and paste up mechanicals and drafting table and pens and stuff. And that was really my first exposure. And then when I was in high school, I wasn't very academically oriented, and I started being able to get freelance jobs and work kind of in a commercial art capacity. And this is in the mid 80s or so. And I started using the Mac very early on. And I became very proficient at using a Mac very early on, with all this freehand and some of the very early, even pre-Adobe software that was available for Macs for desktop publishing. So I got into desktop publishing even before I went to college. I went to Creative College. I went to a state university, SUNY Purchase, which has a large art and communication of film program. And I continued to freelance and work in the kind of traditional graphic design world. And the Mac had become so ubiquitous by the time I graduated college in 1992. And by the time I had graduated, I was working almost exclusively with computers, right? So I've been doing that for, close to 30 years now. And within a couple of years of graduating, you started to get precursors of what would become the internet. I had an early job at Viacom when Viacom, was doing MTV and Nickelodeon websites and things like that, right? And these were just basically very basic HTML and JavaScript sites. So we were, writing HTML and JavaScript sites for these organizations. And then it really just grew holistically, kind of take it as it comes. I knew the technology. I was always very interested in like AV and technology and the way that it intersects with creative. And I kept getting involved in different things and different projects. And, when you've started early and you've got the MTV website and you've got the Nickelodeon website and other things, that makes you attractive to other places. Certainly, Bob Greenberg and RGA really helped me, and a number of the leaders that worked at that organization at the time really helped me with my development, and kind of fine tuning where I wanted to go. But from about that point, late 90s on, I became a tech lead and was always interested in technical problem solving with customers, and continued to go in that direction. And things kind of grew bigger and more holistically from there. But I'm not traditionally trained in it, right? I'm an AV geek, right? I was the AV kid in the high school, and I like music and creativity and the way that those things intersect with the use of the computer and the using the Mac. And it was kind of a very holistic path to me to come into where I am now.
That's awesome to hear, because I think most people think of you have to be this straight A student to get into the field of technology, but you harness your creativity side
Yep.
into technology and self-taught, and I think that's pretty awesome. And you mentioned when you were working on the MTV at RPA website that you had a mentor there. What's the importance of mentorships for someone like yourself that is actually coming from a creative side and getting into technology?
Yeah, so I even at jobs pre-digital, like I had a job very early on. It was one of my first graphic design jobs, and there were many older people there, not too much older, but a little older, and I looked up to them because they had excellence in the execution of what they were doing, and they were meticulous, and they were very principled and disciplined about it. And when you have someone like that who sees potential in you, and they're willing to work with you and teach you what they know, it's highly, highly motivating, right? So to be able to take that, I've had, very fortunate to have had several people like that in different phases of my career and in different parts of the discipline, to be able to learn from them and gain encouragement from them, and gain encouragement from them when you do things incorrectly. Because a lot of the way that you learn is by doing everything wrong, several times, right? And um, being in an environment where that's you're forgiven for that, and you can move on and improve because of it, is a big thing. So I think that mentorship is extremely important, and it is good to have discipline and focus, be forgiving with whoever it is that you're working with. Um, I've grown to really align with the kind of the principles of stoicism, where you are maybe very disciplined and tough on yourself, but not so much with others, right? But people can still learn from you in that way. So I was fortunate to have many people in all different parts of my development and different disciplines that I was able to learn from in that way, and I find it incredibly important and valuable, and it's something that um, I do now. It's very rewarding to be able to help someone learn and progress, both for the kind of recipient of the mentoring and the mentor. And it's very important in team building and personal and professional development for individuals. And it's something that should be an integral portion of your working life.
Yeah, that definitely hits at the core of who I am. I think the mentorship is very important. I've been blessed to have a lot of different ones, and being open-minded and be able to just ask people how they get into where they are is pretty important for people to understand that we are all humans. And I think that in order to learn, you have to have a mentor to do that. As we switch gears, and you've been at the forefront of all of these technologies, and from the internet to Web 2.0 to your crypto to digital transformation to now we're in this AI boom. We've been able to have a conversation around it, and you've enlightened me on some of the things that we don't talk about in today's AI. Can you elaborate on some of the things that most people aren't looking at, the negativity that might be there associated with, or some of the parameters that we might need to put in place in order for us to move forward in a proper way with AI?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it's in many ways, right, it's a process accelerator, and it's got a big wow factor. So being able to see some of the quick visual things that it does, or it can kind of write a whole paper for you, right, very quickly. People are very wowed by that, and everyone's mind immediately goes to, wow, this is going to represent such great cost savings, or um, other things. It will replace hundreds of people. Um, but as you mentioned, right, that's only one facet. So in the last couple of years now, as it becomes more prominent, you've seen a lot of discussion around ethical AI. And generally, most AI models are built up out of an underlying model that uses data sets to compose the model. There's what's called a large language model, which is the one that would be able to derive composition of written pieces out for you. And there are image databases and other things. And those models build exponentially of whatever sample set is given to it. So if you've got bias in the sample set, that bias is going to grow over time and be very lopsided, right? And we're seeing in comparative and calculation based Gen AI models, there's a lot of bias on cultural issues, on gender issues, on right. There's kind of lack of equality. It's not universal, but when you train or seed your model, the data that you're feeding it based on sample set could have some bias, and that bias could exponentially grow over time. Um, I think the creative aspect in terms of writing and image generation is very exciting for people because it produces a near instantaneous result that there's a big wow factor around. But I think other areas that might not be as obvious are very intensive areas where you need a lot of people. So research based, right? We're seeing it for drug research, for comparative analysis, for biopharma, for disciplines that have to generate every possible variant or do research around, what else is in the field. The AI models can help with that, and you're seeing great strides in biomedical research with it and other areas where you would typically need humans to go perform that. I think the third thing is the intent of AI, people have to remember, is that it is a hybrid of human and computer intelligence. So it's human assisted by a computer, computer assisted by a human, and the fine tuning between those interactions is critical to having successful AI that's ethical, that's not biased. And I know that the acceleration portion of it is very attractive, but you still require the balance in your model development, your sample set, making sure that humans are still at the center of the implementation of it and are helping to tune. And it's attractive to try to kind of circumvent some of that to move faster, especially with the great results that it provides. But those are some of the things to think about when you think about very kind of rapid adoption of AI in different contexts.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important thing to point out is the ethics and the bias, whether it's cultural. We've seen some of the biggest providers of AI when we're talking about Google or OpenAI platform, and some of the things that we're seeing in the early ages. Knowing how AI is this all-encompass word today, and you look at from stock market to business to technology across the board, where do you foresee that going, and how do we put those parameters in? Is it going to take government to install some of these things, or is it going to be the people say, hey, like how it happened with Google? I think most people know now, they were doing the blackface or whatever on it. It wasn't real photos of people.
Mhm.
And that created a big storm. Is that what it's going to take for those biases to remove? Because it's still humans doing a lot of this work.
Yeah, so I think we haven't seen ubiquitous commercialization of AI, right? So when it becomes really threaded into you're seeing it like Adobe has a little bit of it now, where the Creative Cloud and the Experience Cloud applications have some AI functionality kind of threaded into it. It can give you variants of photos and things like that, right? Contrast that with um, uh, OpenAI using Scarlett Johansson's voice, or a voice, that sounds remarkably similar to Scarlett Johansson. That's in the open source application, right? And then people are going and using that, and that voice is getting out there. So I think you'll see, as it becomes more penetration in commercial applications, they're really going to have to tighten up the exposure on in questionable areas, right? You're certainly not going to be able to use a celebrity's voice or have a model that has that's developed off of an insufficient sample set, maybe several 100,000 data records. You're going to have to go into the millions and sometimes billions of data records to make sure that bias is engineered out, and then as it scales, it will continue to not be a problem. And I see that as one path, right? The more truer commercialization will have to weed out a lot of the kind of inherent problems with it. It's not, mostly people are using Chat GPT, or if they're really into artwork and graphics, or they're using Midjourney. And the stuff that Midjourney produces is amazing, but it's super subjective. right? It's artwork, right? So I want to be, make me into a wizard, and it makes me a wizard with castles right behind me and everything. Um, that doesn't have a lot of commercial ramification. So using a commercial context, I think you'll see it naturally get tightened up because of the exposure that these organizations would have to face if they didn't improve it. And I think a lot of what you're seeing right now is by virtue of the fact that it's largely um, free and or open source, and in a commercial environment that would have to be improved greatly. So I think you'll see it reduce kind of naturally in that channel. um, Otherwise, there will be major incidents, right? You'll have a 23andMe data breach equivalent of something happening with a Gen AI model that will make some regulation happen around it. But it's the internet and is notoriously unregulated. So that's why I keep going back to the commercial aspect of it. And they will have to really monetize it after a while, and commercial organizations will look to monetize it, and then you'll see more secure research done in those areas to make sure that there's less exposure for uh, ethical issues and bias, and some of the things that are of greater concern with the rapid rise of AI.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that one of the reasons why we have government is for these type of things. We usually don't want government in a lot of this stuff in our life, but having these inherent biases and stuff coming from what we've seen over the last 8 years or so, we definitely need those parameters put in place. Do you foresee any other downfalls of AI that, besides the inherent bias, as people are going out there and learning about AI, what tools they should use, those type of things?
I just see it accelerating too rapidly, and um, not having kind of enough human
Mhm.
involvement, right? So there's again, it's extremely compelling. I mean, you can give it 2 sentences and it'll write you a term paper. And I've got a high school aged kid, and the way that they proctor the exams and everything has been completely transformed because they're all using AI on their phones, right? So now everyone's got to put their phone in a box at the beginning, and we had an issue where our daughter wasn't allowed to use the bathroom for hours because they were afraid, right, that somebody was gonna. So that's a good example of it moving super rapidly to the point where teenagers can use it to write a term paper that they can get an A+ on.
Yeah.
And you're right, you're getting entire classes of kids that are all getting A+, and the teachers know. And a good professor or a teacher can read the paper and understand that it's developed by AI because it has natural language patterns in it that are not natural, right? That's the importance of still having the humans to make adjustments. So I think not going too rapidly, keeping the balance between the human involvement, because it is really intended to be a human computer hybrid model with the greatest strengths from each of those components to advance it. And if you get to a very unbalanced state where one of those things is very out of balance, then there's going to be issues. And I think in security and commercial concerns, that's far like security and commercial context, it's far less of a concern, um, because there are greater ramifications for if it's controlling something mechanical, or it's in charge of something very important. But for more lightweight things like my term paper example or other things, it's got to be closely watched. And then you've also suffer backlash, right? So there's backlash, overly austere conservative policies around the use of it because it's not well understood enough, and now it's perceived as a threat. So we don't want to get to that. with it. I think it's a very powerful and capable tool, but ideally used in the way that it was intended when it was developed, as it was basically a hybrid um, computer and human intelligence model.
Well, as we switch a little bit of gears, what are some of the things that you envision in the next 3 to 5 years, both in the technology field? Do you foresee AI still being the same boom, or with this ever evolving and how fast it has in the last 3 to 5 years? Do you foresee that it's still going to be the number one topic we're talking about today, or in three
Um,
years?
yeah, I mean, I think it will be around and it will develop and it'll become a normal thing that's threaded into all kinds of applications and usage scenarios. I think again right now the dramatic and rapid results that it produces is making it like, this is great. It can be an accelerator. It can replace XYZ. So I think you'll see it for many, many years in process automation and other things where it can prove to be really powerful. I think one of the big ones is data and data cloud. So looking at kind of Google, right, started as the first data cloud company, and when it was in its very early stages, there were no regulations around data sharing and things like that. So they would harvest data and then use that to gain greater intelligence and build models off of that. And you see a lot of commercial organizations going towards data cloud offerings and um, being able to help organizations aggregate, fine tune, see the value in their data and produce rapid results off of that data with things like customer data platforms and all kinds of data cloud aggregators and things like that, especially paired up with a mock architecture, as I mentioned earlier. That allows organizations to really move very quickly and get great valuable insights rapidly out of the data that they have, right? Because and I don't think that's likely to go away. Data, cloud first, data cloud, and having organizations really moving from um, hybrid or still, many organizations that have significant security concerns or still have on-premise components or largely on-premise systems. I think eventually you'll see that go away completely, or as to a very significant degree as these things develop. And then you're going to have AI in the cloud, which you kind of already have right behind the scenes, like something like Netflix that gives you basically comparative analysis, like you might like this, or give us a little feedback, thumb up, and then we'll serve you other things. Amazon works like that. Many, many commercial interactive platforms work like that. That's built off of data interactions. And it's built off of strong signals and data points that you can glean from those interactions and save, right? Uh, AI has a big uh, part in that development, but without being able to share some degree of data um, all over the web, it makes it hard to employ those models. And you've got kind of everything moving in that direction, right? The idea that you can lose your cell phone anywhere in the world and go into a store and buy one and turn it on and put your email address and password in, and then basically inside of 10 minutes you've got the same phone that you just lost, right? Even 5-10 years ago that was impossible. It was impossible for that to happen. You had to go in the store and have them back it up for you and do all that, right? That's because all your data is on the cloud. So getting organizations more comfortable with whatever security concerns they might have, and having more robust commercial offerings that can relax those concerns that consumers might have around getting their data in the cloud. I think you'll see many organizations, especially smaller ones, are not they're cloud only, not just cloud first. And I think you'll begin to see more and more cloud only, and eventually you'll get large commercial enterprise that's cloud only, and things really seem to all be moving in that direction, and I think that will become much more prominent over the next 3 to 5 years. AI threaded in, and some of the other technologies that are more prominent now are not likely to go away, but are will evolve in that model and become more powerful because of that model.
And that's a lot of knowledge that you've been dropping, Ed. I really appreciate it. I know that we have to get ready to wrap it up, but I think
Okay.
that one of the questions that I always like to ask, and it's important for me to ask this both for myself, but also for other viewers, is what's one question that during this interview you wish I asked?
Let's see. Well, I always like to ask, I always ask in interviews or other things, what is your vision of excellence, or what does excellence in this domain look like for you? And I can give you what I think my answer would be to that, and it's basically a balance of having systems that are ethical, that are not moving too fast, that have uh, discipline and ethics built into the model. So we see a lot, especially in organizations that work agile or in programs that work agile. And anything that can produce a rapid result, there's always great desire to move faster. And some percentage of that doesn't have to be majority percentage, but some percentage of that needs to be balanced with ethics and discipline. So you don't have, I would be willing to guess that things like the Bank of America data breach and the 23andMe data breach, and things that are, big disasters in digital that no one wants to happen. I would be willing to bet in almost all of those scenarios, there was lack of discipline. Somebody might have had a huge media buy, hundreds of millions, and they had to meet something by a certain date. So not a lot of QA was done, right? You'll see the importance of that more and more as systems become more powerful. And if they're too lopsided with lack of discipline and quality control and other checks and balances that would allow you to make sure that you don't have a large data breach or failures, it's problematic on many different levels. So always balancing out the need and the desire to produce rapid results with the discipline of making sure that you're still checking things, testing things, not exposing data. Extremely, extremely important. And, obviously nobody wants to hear from the IT guy that you have to do these 29 things before you can release your cool application, but still having some, some degree of that engineered in so that everyone could have a great experience without problems, I think is extremely, extremely important. And even as an individual contributor, you can help by trying to remain grounded in those principles when you work. And that's kind of my philosophy in that area, and what I like to try to follow, and have it be not invasive, but a principled thing that guides the way that I operate, so that I can be confident that I'm still producing quality results for my customers.
Just got to take a step back sometimes, and ethics is very important, especially how we are in today's society. And it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait till I have you on again as we get further down. I just enjoy having these conversations because I learn so much, especially coming from the business side of things. So being able to speak with someone of your caliber is just a pleasure. So thank you, Ed.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Thanks. You
Cheers.
too.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you'll tune in next time. For more information on how we can help your business, check out our website at sigmaways.com.
I'd love to hear your feedback. Please send me a message with any topic or questions you want me to cover. Also, if you're in the world of business and technology, I would love to have you as a guest. Please hit the like and subscribe button below and stay up to date on the next video. Once again, I'm David, and this is All Things Business and Technology. Cheers.